3 years ago, a group of 6 novice cavers bit off more than they could chew when they journeyed into the vast expanse of the Giant's Hole cave system in Castleton. The cave is known for long constricted tunnels, dangerously high water, and frigid air. One of the cavers couldn't make it up the large pit known as Garland's Pot. This same deadly pitch had claimed one life already. Would it claim another? Find out as we explore the rescue at Garland's Pot inside Giant's Hole Cave. 5 men, ages 25 to 33, and one 25-year-old woman went to a basic wild cave once before. Their trip excited them and set them on the path to becoming cavers. Their first trip wasn't very difficult, so they wanted to try something more physically demanding. For their second cave adventure, they chose the locally famous Giant's Hole Cave. Wearing mostly surface gear like warm sweaters, pants, and hiking boots, the group drove to the nearby farm, deposited their 3 pounds, and hiked to the entrance of Giant's Hole, a classic image of a cave with a dome-like hole in the discolored rock face at the bottom of a large conical dip in the grassy plains. The group was full of energy as they walked along the riverbed lined with moss and snow. Then, one by one, they walked under the tooth-like spikes of the mouth of the cave. The entry chamber's blue-gray stone reveals what the outer rock would look like without exposure to sunlight. They all flicked on their lights and followed the path of water into the cave. Giant's Hole, otherwise known as Swallet P12, is located near the small village of Castleton that's nestled in a tributary of the No River. The cave is part of the broader Giant's Oxlow Maskhill system. The Maskhill portion used to be a separate mine, but cavers found a long connection between the two years ago. The Giant's Hole portion is a little over 3 miles long with a vertical range of 692 feet. Giant's Hole is a grade 4 out of 5 on the UK cave system chart, or a severe cave on the Mendip grading scale. That means it's a tough cave with difficult, hazardous conditions, with agonizing crawls and dangerous pitches. Far harder than this group's first caving trip. Splunkers need skill and stamina to complete the Giant's Hole, though some advanced splunkers consider it easier than other grade 4 caves. The group followed the Swallet entrance, which takes cavers along the path of the flowing water. From photos, they couldn't even tell there was water flowing below the rocks at the entrance, but when they got there, ankle-high water was splashing through the stones as they descended. The entry took them down a steep ramp by an old broken-down gate. Beyond the ruins, they reached the mud choke. The group struggled through the mud as water continued to circulate around them. Eventually, they reached the base camp chamber, which serves as a junction between a long segment called the Windpipe, a path that leads to the mines, and a pathway called the Crab Walk. At this point, the group had a choice to make. They could continue through Boss Avon to reach Garland's Pot, or go through the Crab Walk and finish through Garland's Pot. Garland's Pot is one of the most famous portions of the cave. Located about 840 feet from the entrance, this section is a 23-foot deep circular pit. Resin anchors on the left wall and natural anchors on the right allow cavers to rig their own ropes to climb down to or up from the stream below. Normally, water sprays from the top and gently showers the whole lower floor of Garland's Pot. If they chose to start with Garland's Pot, the cavers would go through the Windpipe, which snakes through tubes of varying diameter before reaching a hub that connects to the lower portion of Giant's Hole. However, cavers normally go down Crab Walk because it's easier to descend than to ascend the extremely long and narrow passage. This winding, jagged section is tall but narrow, so cavers have to walk through it sideways. There are also multiple steps that lower the elevation, which are harder to climb than to step down from. The whole Crab Walk can be wet as water from the stream cuts through the walk along the path. The group took the common route and slowly shuffled down the tight corridor. Water from the walls, ceiling, and along the floor began to seep into their clothing. By the time they reached the next challenge, they were already starting to shiver. Next, they reached the Vice, a region where the already narrow walls became even tighter. This portion can only be completed by thin people. Alternatively, cavers can lay in the water to reach a different section to climb over the Vice, but they couldn't even see the pathway. The stream was too high, and the flow of water too fast with blurring current. With some painful squeezing, all of the cavers crossed through the Vice. After some more shuffling, the group officially reached the lower section of the cave. They chose the most common route, but they had ignored a vital piece of advice posted by local grotto clubs. These cavers recommend checking the route through Garland's Pot before descending through the crab walk, because the lower series can easily flood. There's no way to tell how bad the water could be until they're already in the lower series. And to make matters worse, the crab walk connects to a portion that's nearly at the lowest point of the cave. Many of these lower portions can become flooded during the rain. The cave should be avoided by novices during the rain. There wasn't any rain, so the cavers thought they were fine, but they forgot about the snow. The crab walk connected to St. Valentine's Sump, which can rapidly flood, catching cavers off guard, trapping them with a high chance of drowning. It's also hard to turn around and go backwards if it begins to flood. Luckily, the water wasn't high enough yet, but they could see it was rising as they looked down a ledge into the pool below. They had to get down and across the water before the water started flooding onto the next passage. They were thoroughly wet, and the cold air of the cave was making their teeth chatter as they hurried past St. Valentine's Sump. Beyond that passage, they could have gone up a cliff to reach more of the lower series, including a path below Corkscrew Shaft into the Geology Pot, along a tight crawl through Far Curtain and Sprout Hall to the East Canal. This region is permanently flooded, so these adventurers had no business going there, unless they wanted to try squeezing through the dog kennel and ascending or descending down the multiple steep climbs of the filthy 5 pitches. However, unbeknownst to the novice cavers, the above-ground snow was melting, and these sections were pouring with icy water. Evidence has shown that Giant's Hole has flooded all the way up to the 3rd pitch of the Filthy 5, which would mean tens of thousands of gallons of water could be lapping at their heels as they tried to push through the cave. In 1965, the whole cave had to be drained over the course of 25 hours to rescue a caver named Donna Carr. They were all tired already, just a few hours into their journey, so instead, they chose to skip the lower sections as they passed under McGinn's Rift, a massive conical section extending up near the surface. Then, they had to face the Giant's Windpipe. This long crawl can also be partly or totally flooded. In regular above-ground clothes, they had to push through deep water that numbed their limbs as they struggled forward. Miraculously, the continually rising current didn't sweep any of the 6 away. But then they reached Garland's Pot. They were near the exit, but this climb can be tricky. By the time the cavers reached Garland's Pot, they had been underground in the cold, dank air of the cave for hours longer than they intended. This was it, though, the final climb. Occasionally, experienced cavers use wire ladders to make the descent easier. Regular cavers would have access to this tool, but these novices had probably never seen a wire ladder, so they chose the harder route, climbing up a rope with no assistance from other tools. Having seen the epic photos of people climbing in Garland's Pot, they brought the basic requirements: simple harnesses and rope. The group used prusik knots to tie smaller ropes around the large anchored rope. One knot gave them a foothold, while the other connected to their harness. One caver struggled to reach the top, but the others were also faced with their own problems. Normally, the water is a light mist in Garland's Pot, but the waterfall above was a full shower. At the bottom, the water pooled and soaked into their boots. The cavers were pale, pruned, and shivering while they waited for each person to make the climb. The second person got to the top, but the third caver, a 27-year-old man, was struggling. He couldn't hold on to the rope. His weak hands couldn't grip, and his shivering limbs refused to pull his weight up to safety. Somehow, he managed to swing his weight up a bit further. He fumbled with his handholds, and this continued on and on for 35 grueling minutes until he didn't have the strength to continue. The two others at the top rigged a second rope. They attached him to it, cut the one he was on, and gently lowered him down. He crumbled to the ground in a ball, pained and shivering. Little did they know, in 2007, a 50-year-old man attempted the return climb up from Garland's pot when tragedy struck. It would take a physically fit person 15 minutes to reach the top, even with the water pouring overhead, but he couldn't handle it. By the time rescuers reached him, he was unconscious. They arrived 10 hours after that man had entered Giant's Hole, and following another 2-hour extraction, they got him out, but it was too late. That man died climbing Garland's pot. The two cavers at the top called down and decided to leave Giant's Hole to dial 999 and call for a cave rescue squad, but would the 27-year-old and the 3 other novices suffer the same fate? The Derbyshire Cave Rescue Organization came to the rescue, bringing with them their van that transports gear, serves as a communication hub for the rescuers, and can transport and treat patients with an opening in the rear. The rescue squad was close by, so they got to the cave and ran down the entrance to Garland's pot. By the time they got there, however, the man had lost consciousness multiple times. His chances of survival were slipping. Rescuers deftly flew down the pitch and found that all 4 of the cavers still inside the hole were suffering from hypothermia. The team put 3 of them in a bivvy shelter, or a bivouac sack, which provides emergency protection from the elements with its lightweight layers of waterproofed ripstop nylon. They put the coldest man in a special British cave rescue cast bag, or casualty bag. These devices were specially created by the British Cave Rescue Council, alongside researchers at the University of Leeds and Aiguille Alpine. These devices used bulky thermal layers to lock in heat. However, the original cast bags were heavy and largely incompatible with most compact cave stretchers. If this man would have waited a few months until 2021, he would have been rescued using the improved design, which features a jacket overlayer, a water-resistant insulation layer, a waterproof shell, an inner vapor barrier, and both internal and external heat packs. The rescue team placed the man in the bag, which wrapped around his face and sealed with Velcro to prevent heat from escaping, as they kept track of his vitals and monitored the other cavers. While they worked, the Buxton Mountain Rescue Team also came to their aid. As the 27-year-old warmed up, the 4 trapped cavers were given food and warm drinks. As they recovered, a volunteer doctor came to Garland's pot to ensure they were stable enough to undergo the extraction. The way out was fairly simple. There were already plenty of synthetic and natural anchors to lift them all up the pitch using stretchers. They moved swiftly through the entrance and out of Giant's Hole. The doctor checked all of their vital signs again at the surface. Most of them were fine, but the 27-year-old, the coldest caver, had a fast heart rate, which made them uneasy. Hypothermia normally induces bradycardia, or slow heart rate, and during the rewarming phase, a patient's heart rate will usually increase in speed. But changes to blood pressure and heart rate could suddenly overwork the heart, which was already struggling in the cold, possibly leading to lower oxygen and blood flow to the limbs and brain. The man's condition could suddenly get worse, and he could even have a stroke. The East Midlands Ambulance Service quickly took him to the hospital for further care. The man's condition later stabilized, narrowly avoiding yet another death claimed by Garland's pot in Giant's Hole. The whole mission wrapped up in just 4 hours, marking the completion of the Derbyshire Rescue Team's 93rd rescue that year. The cold, wintry river in Giant's Hole Cave nearly killed a novice caver, but fast mobilizing rescuers saved him. Do you think he's ever caved again? Would you go caving again if you nearly died on your second adventure? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Hit that like button if you want to hear more stories like this one, and make sure to subscribe for more tales of dangerous caves and incredible rescues.